Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Hello, welcome everybody to StartupGrind-Zagreb. Our guest speaker today is Vlaho, the president and chairman of UBIK, and he's gonna tell us more about himself and about UBIK and what it does and about blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Thanks, Agustin. As Agustin said, my name is Vlaho Hrdalo. I'm a lawyer by profession. I have my own office here in Zagreb, and apart from that, I was named I had the honor to be the first chairman of UBIK, which is the Association for Blockchain and Cryptocurrency in Croatia, which was founded a year ago. It was founded by 7 founders who are members of the board, myself included, and it eventually grew to some 300 members or so from Croatia, but also from abroad, of which some are private persons, and there are also an increasing number of companies. I finished naturally law school since I'm a lawyer, and apart from that, I did a master's in diplomacy, and now I'm currently doing a PhD in smart contracts, also at the University of Zagreb. And well, thanks for inviting me and having me here for the Startup Grind.
You're very welcome. So you told us a little bit about yourself. So when did you first got in touch with blockchain? When did it become interesting for you?
Or
was it cryptocurrency before?
No, literally, I was going through some emails because I was also a guest at the podcast recently, and they've asked me, like, when was the first time I heard of Bitcoin? I went through the emails, and I saw that sometimes in 2012 I was bugging my cousin to check this Bitcoin, but it wasn't any idea of buying it, just phenomenologically. Yeah. And actually, blockchain interested me more because when I started thinking about blockchain, it's the only system that I've ever encountered that doesn't include anyone getting penalized for anything. So if you think of any system in the world, including private relations, where you cheat on your spouse, you get divorced. If you don't study at the university, you fail an exam. If you are slacking at work, you get fired. There's always some system of getting penalized. Yeah. Apart from blockchain, if you desire to not follow the rules set by Satoshi in the Bitcoin, no one cares. You won't get banned. You don't get your account annulled or cancelled or anything. If you want to write down false transactions, the only penalty you get is being ignored. So if I write down a transaction where I say I'm sending you 20 Bitcoins and the network realizes I have no Bitcoins, then they just ignore me. They don't. I don't get punished for anything. So on that level, I really admire the system that functions, that does what it is supposed to do, even though people are allowed not to follow rules. So that was to be honest, my basic motivation for blockchain.
No, that's not what I expected.
Oh, well, that's the truth.
That's great. So you don't get penalized.
Yeah, well, I didn't find a way to get penalized. I mean, I don't do stuff, just in spite of the rules that are on blockchain. But I realized that if people do, they're more than welcome to, for instance, fork out. I don't like Bitcoin. I'm gonna make one block bigger in size because I think that's better. You're free to do it. And moreover, there are no copyrights, so you're free to use Bitcoin. I'm not a fan of copyright, generally. And if you want to call it Bitcoin Croatia, no one cares. You just call it Bitcoin Croatia. You have your own currency. Whether it will have any value is up to how good you are and what you claim your blockchain will do.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit? So, how do you see? Is there a definition of blockchain? I know very little about it.
Sorry?
I know very little about it. So.
There are several definitions. Now I've seen this other phrase being used, like DLT, distributed ledger technology, which is the definition of blockchain. Because blockchain was founded when these person or persons who named themselves Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin as the first cryptocurrency of modern cryptocurrency. So he or she or they invented blockchain in order to invent Bitcoin. So they were able to finally resolve the long-standing problem of how to prevent something being spent twice in digital world, because, for instance, if you have a PDF or something, you can send it to me and to the gentleman and to all of them the same piece of information. With Bitcoin, that doesn't work like that. You can't send Bitcoin, the same Bitcoin, to different people at the same time, of course. They can forward it. So blockchain was invented in order to create Bitcoin, and the only idea that was, well, that was possible to do it is that all the members of the network should have all the transactions at all time. So this is not my example, but it's really nice. Is if you imagine a room full of bookkeepers and accountants, and then I send you one Bitcoin, and then one accountant comes up to the stage and says, "Listen, everybody, Vlaho doesn't have one Bitcoin, but now Augustin does. So please make sure in your ledgers, books, please make sure that you take off Vlaho's Bitcoin and you attribute it to Augustin." Okay? So unless they all do it, or in Bitcoin, if more than 50% of people do it, it's considered to be the truth. Okay? But then back to penalization, if this gentleman decides that he doesn't want to enter it in his books, no one cares, because the majority knows this is the truth. So this is the first trustless truth mechanism that was created in the world, or in the, at least in the digital world. And the other thing about blockchain, what is interesting is that it is the no problem. It is the system of that was created natively on the internet. So whatever we know today was created somewhere else or some time before and moved to internet. So if you have mobile banking, it was banking, but it's now banking on the internet. You know,
offline to online.
Yeah, okay. It was moved from offline to online. Bitcoin never existed offline. Bitcoin is natively created on the internet for the internet, and which also, in my opinion, makes it special.
Okay, well, now I definitely understand the ledger part of it.
Yeah.
So continuously updated ledger of what.
But the keyword is also distributed, which means that I don't hold it, nor you hold it, nor any bank holds it.
There's no centralized.
No, so yeah, it's decentralized, and it gives everyone the same opportunity. If you want to take part in the blockchain, ecosystem, the community, you can just do it. There's no one granting you the right, or what is more important, no one taking that right away from you. Because if you remember the 2 billion or so unbanked people in the world, that means that someone is deciding whether they should have the access to the bank system, to the money, or not. And since we live in the world where banks have the monopoly on money, they decide who gets to play the game and who doesn't. It doesn't work that way with Bitcoin.
So that's pretty great when I think about it. Even though I do know one startup that is helping people who don't have access to banking, access to some banking services. Even
there are several startups that kind.
So let's mention. Well, I've heard something about in relation to Bitcoin, to cryptocurrencies, no, to blockchain, so many terms.
Keywords,
hashtags. Decentralized internet.
Decentralized internet?
Yes. So this is something blockchain might be used for, right?
Well, I've heard now they're increasingly talking about decentralized these exchanges, because when you think of cryptocurrencies, the whole idea is to get things decentralized. That doesn't work so simple, because, for instance, if you take one emanation, one part of blockchain that usually comes to mind, which is smart contract, we can come back to that later. Then you always have the question, where does the smart contract get its information from? So if you get it from one place, then you have again created a point of failure or a point of centralization. And the same way is with internet. So I'll get back to copyright again, because it's a theme I'm interested in. If you, for instance, have a pirate website, there is someone that can take that website away from you. Or if you do anything else that, according to someone, is not, it doesn't even have to be legal. It can be just, it is frowned upon. You can get your website taken away from you. So the idea, probably, I'm not familiar with the decentralized internet, is to have for internet to be provided to people without having some central body deciding what is good and what is not.
Yes, you did mention you had some experience with torrents and online piracy.
As a lawyer?
Yes, as a lawyer. You work as a lawyer.
Yeah, but I can't really tell you about cases much. But yes, I have had with pirates.
I mention it because there's So using torrents,
Yeah.
and remember, using torrents is not illegal. If you download illegal content, that makes it illegal.
Yeah, but take into account, since you're mentioning it, the fact that something is illegal content is because someone said so.
Yes.
Not that it's something that is inherently wrong, you know. So
And usually that someone is MPAA.
yeah, well, or RIAA or whatever copyright organization, yeah, but it's not inherently wrong, you know. It's not child pornography. It's a song from Rihanna, you know. So.
Well, I mention it because this is basically what made me think of blockchain, because it's peer-to-peer.
Yes.
You know, I like peer-to-peer sharing. It makes a lot of sense, you know. A lot of people sharing the same content. So how is that similar to the blockchain?
It is, blockchain is peer-to-peer. It's just not peer-to-peer transfer of packets that contain a movie or something. Yeah. It's peer-to-peer transaction. So these transactions can be financial in their nature, which they usually are. But you also have blockchain projects that are not financial, you know. But you need transaction as a description of what is being transferred between two parties, you know, between person A and person B.
Data-wise, it's usually a small quantity of data, or
the transaction itself is usually small, yeah, in size, but it can store difficult, you know, large, let's say, importance-wise, large amounts of data.
Okay. So, what would you say are some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses of blockchain today versus blockchain, I don't know, 5 or more years ago?
To be honest, 5 or more years ago, you didn't have blockchain. You only had Bitcoin's blockchain.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, okay. First and foremost for years. Blockchain, generally, the strengths we have already covered. Which there is this great thing that there is no single point of failure. Okay, so if you have 1,000 nodes taking part in blockchain and 100 of them are from New York and there is no electricity in New York, you still have 900 people, verifying the transactions. Mm-hmm. Technically, it is possible that what everyone fears is they're called cryptocurrencies because their functioning is based on the cryptographic algorithms. There are concerns that future quantum computers will be able to crack down the cryptography that is now powering blockchain. This possibility exists. It probably won't happen in near future, but every code was cracked eventually. So.
That would allow the complete manipulation of.
Yes, it would also. There is another concern: the so-called 50% plus 1 or 51% attack. That is that someone takes over the network, because, as I've said, it functions on the base of consensus, not unison. You know, you don't have to have everyone on board. Yeah, it is majority. That's another thing, and there is a third thing that recently came to mind is the fact that, as I've said, blockchain is natively on the internet, but you need internet for something that is native on the internet. So, since we still rely on these huge cables going under the ocean, if there's no internet, there's no blockchain. But if something happens that there's no internet in the entire world, the fact that we don't have blockchain might not be the prime concern. You know?
Yes.
But there is a blockchain project that is launching satellites in order to keep Bitcoin network alive if this event should happen. So they're already taking it into account. It's like small satellites, and the transactions will be very slow and so on, but it will keep the system functioning, supposedly.
Well, there's also several organizations trying to work on solutions if some of these things happen, like the Lifeboat Foundation out of.
Yeah, no, I don't know that.
Oh, they're doing research and preventative measure. What happens if an AI virus attacks the internet? What happens if a new plague breaks out? What happens if I don't know? All sorts of things. You can look it up. It's quite interesting, really.
Yeah, but to be honest, I don't think it can come into the sentence. I'm very fond of blockchain, but I don't think it's the same problem for the world if the blockchain stops to work and if there's a plague outbreak.
Yeah,
it's really not the same thing.
That depends how much you have invested in blockchain. To you. So let's talk about cryptocurrency a little bit.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin is the most famous one, the most used Is it still the most used?
I think so, yeah. It
Can you tell us
could be
something?
that Ethereum, I don't know what you mean under is it still used. I mean, there are
Is it,
more,
is it still
most
the
people,
most popular? You know?
most popular in terms of that it's, at some point there was this currency that per unit was more worth than Bitcoin. Okay, so there was this, I just looked it up because a friend of mine said, I've heard you what you said, that Bitcoin is the most worth per unit. Well, it isn't. And then he sent me a link to some Russian cryptocurrency that has only 2 units. Okay, so there's only 2 pieces. And each of them was, I think they were trading amongst themselves, you know, to create value, and one of them was worth like $100,000 or something. But that was really short span because a week later didn't exist among the top 1,000 or so. So I think I haven't checked recently, but I think Bitcoin might be the most worth, most expensive, let's say.
So it's still the most expensive one.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Maybe if someone knows another that would be worth more than Bitcoin, I don't know. It hovers around 6,300, 400. I don't know now. But, you know, it's very fluctuating area. But there are different projects. You know, every day, literally every day, people come up with their own. It's called ICO. It's like or IPO or ITO token or coin or similar to IPO, right?
Yeah.
Where they issue their own currency or token, and then they say, listen, I have this project, and this project will do this and this, and for that I need a crowdfunding sort of method to finance myself. The easiest way is to do it through cryptocurrencies. So you send me your, usually ethers, but other cryptocurrencies get used as well. And once I'm done with the project, or once this phase is reached, I will ship you my, whatever we call these tokens. And if you believe these persons and their team and their advisors and how sound their plans may seem to you, then you can invest. This is not investment advice. You can invest by means of sending some, you know, established crypto in order to get their tokens. Of course, that is usually, or 99% of the situations, done because you want to gamble that their token, which you will get. Let's say you will get 10,000 of their tokens for 1 ether.
Yeah.
These 10,000 may, in a week or a year or a month, be worth like 7 ethers or 10 or 12,000. You know? So you're gambling on the increase of value, and this is what drives, well, what drove ICOs, because now currently there's a bit of a ICO winter. There's not so much investment going on, at least not in the way it happened in late 2017 and the beginning of this year.
Those kind of situations you mentioned remind me of basically a new stock market.
There were, when in 2017 Bitcoin reached its all-time high, there were questions about is it a bubble, and then you had this tremendously simple and stupid comparisons to tulip mania in Holland. Which is, I'm not saying Bitcoin wasn't or isn't a bubble, but to compare revolutionary technology to flowers is not really the same. However, what everyone did expect is this correction in price. So 1 Bitcoin that was worth like 19,000 quite soon became worth $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000. But we always tell people when they ask us, you shouldn't invest money that you're not willing to lose. So you don't go take a loan in order to invest in Bitcoin or in anything else. You know, with Bitcoin, it's not different. But
it's a gamble.
It's always a gamble. Any investment is a gamble. But you know, these investments that are so-called high risk, high yield means that if you risk a lot, you may, but you may not earn a lot. But also there's, you know, if you're more conservative type of investor, you go for the low risk, low yield stuff, and you invest in some bonds or in some derivatives and so on. But I'm telling you, I'm not an investor, and I don't do investment advice. So if you plan on investing in cryptocurrencies, you have to ask someone smarter than I am.
So I've noticed over the last few years, a lot of people who claim to be experts in a lot of consultancies and agencies that give advice of you know, how to invest in crypto. And
to be honest, to call yourself an expert is, well, that's easy, you know, anyone can be subject to this day, but Bitcoin hasn't existed for more than 10 years. Okay, so we are reaching the 10th year from the first block or zero block, 3rd of January 2009. So we have not still reached the 10th year of Bitcoin. Yeah. And in my opinion, in order to be expert, you need to spend years doing something. So there are people, I imagine, who can be considered experts, but you know, on LinkedIn, when you see that someone is a crypto entrepreneur and ICO advisor, and it usually means they're unemployed, which is fine, but I don't know if you should be taking advice from them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned earlier that there's basically about 1,000 or more than 1,000 different
I think
cryptocurrencies.
3,000 or thousands.
Oh, wow.
Also take into account that there are cryptocurrencies that are not listed on major exchanges, on the top tier exchanges or on the second tier exchanges. So you don't have to, generally the ultimate goal is to have your token or your coin traded, you know, because that may result in its increase in value.
Sure.
But there are also, for instance, now, I don't know if you're familiar, there is this very popular notion of tokenization, which means that you take some physical object and transfer its value into tokens. So maybe the best example is there is a startup doing tokenization of works of art. So for instance, if you own Picasso, you say, I am selling 1% of my Picasso as this token that is tied to 1% of Picasso value. So you become 1% owner of my painting. You will never be able to hang Picasso in your home, but since most people consider the works of art to be a safe investment, they almost all the time go up, like gold, for instance.
Okay.
Then they say, okay, I don't have to have Picasso to watch it at home, but I'm more than happy to buy 1% because usually you're not, you don't have the potential to buy an entire Picasso, you know, because it's too expensive. Yeah. But let's say if a painting is worth, I don't know, 30 million and you have $300,000, you can become an owner of 1% of a very, very famous painting, you know. And then you can attach maybe some other rights to it. For instance, you can decide to which museum it goes, to which insurance company you deal with in order to have it protected and so on. So it enables you to deal with stuff that were previously way out of your reach because they were prohibitively expensive.
Sure. So, can you tell us a little bit more about UBIK now?
Well, UBIK was founded, to be honest, I was not the initiator of that. I was not the pioneer of crypto in Croatia.
Okay.
There were people that were way ahead of me and still are. But I was at one conference where this idea came to mind because one of the prominent members literally gathered 7 of us by the hand and said, listen, we need to do an NGO because if we don't do it now, we won't do it ever. And 8 days later, we made an NGO. I did all the papers, my office did it, and so on. We applied, we were officially founded. The idea was to, first and foremost, was to push what we thought was the right idea, and we call it, or we are amongst the people who call it the self-regulation. The blockchain is not really regulated in Croatia or anywhere else. There are certain, you know, attempts to regulate this and that, but you don't have general regulation, which may not be that bad, to be honest. But we thought that the regulators will at some point go into regulating stuff. The stuff they only learned existed today. You know, so if there are people who are dealing with that for 5, 6, 7, or 8 years, we thought that they should at least be heard when this regulation is entered, you know, when it is drafted. And these, you know, new technologies differ in a manner that if you, for instance, when the government regulates taxes in a new way, so it changes the tax rate from 25% to 24%, it really only needs to consult the experts and the Minister of Finance. You know, it's stuff that the government has always been dealing with. Blockchain is not something the government has always been dealing with because no one has been dealing with because it's 9 years old, you know. So we did these initiatives. We went to talk to literally anyone who wanted to talk to us, of the regulators, and some of them still don't want to talk to us, but that's fair. They were quite straightforward. They admitted that the stuff they don't know, and sometimes it's quite a lot they don't know. But they were still quite open, and what we really cherished is the fact that they didn't want to, you know, stifle the growth. They didn't want all this to go away. All of this would be the easiest for them because, you know, I honestly understand. We met some officials of the, for instance, Croatian tax administrations that were people who are late in their careers. So someone who is, let's say, 60 years of age has been dealing with only one type of income, and that's money. That's regular money issued by the central banks. And now some kids want to explain to them that the money doesn't have to exist physically, that the central bank doesn't issue it, that the Croatian National Bank says it's not money, but we call it currency, that there's a cryptographic algorithm behind it, we have a digital wallet and it's all on blockchain. It was introduced by a Japanese guy that no one knows he exists. So I understand it's not simple for them to, which is why I really appreciate their effort.
And he of course asks, so where is it headquartered? Nowhere.
Of course, yeah. Okay, this when you try to explain blockchain, you can draw stuff, you know. But then there was an idea in Croatia to create the so-called DAO, which is distributed autonomous organization. So that's an organization that doesn't have anyone running it. So imagine trying to explain the DAO or DAO to someone who is not even technically, you know. I have clients who ask me about stuff, they are not of technical, you know, background, and some stuff you can't really explain in 5 minutes.
Yes.
I'm not of technical background, I still don't understand, not everything, I still don't understand a lot of things.
Yeah, I get that. I'm in startups, and always when I have to explain startups to someone who has never even heard of it before, it's not fast.
But to be honest, I'm currently a legal advisor to an ICO, a startup that I don't know how to explain. So I don't have words to explain what this startup wants to do. I have a reason to believe that what they're telling me is sound, and I see the team that is doing it, but I can't tell you in 2 sentences what they do.
I've met a few startups like that, one in San Francisco, one even in Croatia. So my background is in IT, 15 years of experience in IT, and still I was asking the guy for the 3rd time, okay, can you explain it to me, only use different words?
Yeah, like layman terms.
No,
but it's not just in technology, you know, a physician, a doctor that I know, he's a molecular biologist, he holds a PhD in molecular biology. And he went to a lecture that was done by Ivan Džikić, which is a prominent Croatian scientist. He deals with cancer and so on. So they studied together. They did a PhD together. He went to his lecture and he told me he understood the headline and the first sentence.
That's it.
So if something that moves so fast, and if you're not constantly, you know, catching up and doing your reading in 6 months' time, it's gone. We've heard that some colleagues of ours say that 1 month in real world is like 1 month in crypto is like 12 months in real world. That's how fast stuff happens.
I can see the parallel between crypto and startups also. It's not as fast. Crypto looks faster still, but
but crypto is startups on steroids. You know, it's everything is, you know, bigger and augmented.
Yeah. So being in the legal profession, dealing with blockchain and what you mentioned earlier, how do you think how it will go the attempts in regulation of cryptocurrency? Not only in Croatia, but
generally.
what examples have you seen?
Well, I, for instance, like the EU approach. The EU is allowing the industry to develop without burdening it with too much regulations. The primary concerns when we talk to the regulators is money laundering. So someone put into their head that crypto is used for money laundering, which you can, on top of your head, you can just decide to agree with it or not. But the only independent research that was done by the company Elliptic from UK says that less than 1% of all Bitcoin transactions are for illicit stuff, so less than 1%. And the only research that was done exactly on money laundering, which was done in Japan, says, or the result of it is that less than 0.20% of all money laundering cases is connected to cryptocurrencies. So we are trying to tackle these misinformation and these prejudice by facts, and we try to show the research that there's not much research, but there isn't any research that suggests that people use cryptocurrencies for money laundering or for that is recent research from yesterday. The USA, I don't know which department it is, but the official part of US government yesterday published the fact that they can prove zero terrorism funding activities connected to cryptocurrencies.
Wow.
So they cannot link cryptocurrencies to terrorism activities. But still, I understand the concern because although some people consider it anonymous, Bitcoin is actually pseudonymous, which means you are given an alias. But unless you are very well versed in IT, you cannot hide your trail as easy as you think.
Yeah.
And also, all the companies that I deal with or that my office represents and deal with cryptocurrencies outright tell you we don't deal with cash. So if you want to come to us, for instance, we're an exchange, and you want to come to us with 1 million euros of cash, we don't do it. So it is not an industry that is prone to money laundering or that wants to deal with money laundering, because no one in their sane mind wants to deal with money laundering. But you have this problem that there's a Bulgarian philosopher, Cvetan Todorov, who said that certain parts of the society have this like moral sufficit, extra moral in them to tell other people what they can do. So the problem is that we have let banks and governments who have proven themselves multiple times to be amoral tell everyone else what is moral and what isn't.
Yeah.
So it is quite, in my opinion, it's quite difficult to talk to bankers and then they lecture you about money laundering, when the biggest cases of money laundering, which are in hundreds of millions of dollars, are performed by banks. Recent example is the ING Bank in Netherlands. There is this a huge, gigantic case of money laundering where the Danish CEO just quit out. I've seen it, where the Russians laundered, I think it was $300 billion through a bank. So it's really not comparable, you know. And then the banks tell you that you shouldn't money launder. Of course, I shouldn't money launder. No one should. But it shouldn't come from you. Hey, ciao. And, yeah.
Sorry, you were not?
No.
Very good. Okay. So you missed everything, but your luck. There's going to be a video you can see probably even when you come in. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of topics. What do you think is something that's not being thought upon right now concerning blockchain cryptocurrency, and it should?
I really don't know. I'm very bad in predicting future. The fact for that is that I didn't buy Bitcoin back in 2012.
Yeah.
So I really, when technological stuff, you know, are in question, it's really, really difficult to say what will happen in 5 years. You know.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, 10 years ago, you didn't have Bitcoin at all. Now we are here discussing a startup grind, what will happen in Croatian scene of blockchain. So it sounds science fiction to me. And there's artificial intelligence and quantum computers and so on and so on. It's beginning to look a lot like from a dystopian movie.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, what I don't like about this culture that there's a lot of people, like we mentioned, these ICO advisors. There's a lot of people dealing with cryptocurrency and blockchain because it's a buzzword. You know,
Yeah.
There was an example where this company just attached blockchain to their name. So, for instance, if it was Coca-Cola, it would be blockchain Coca-Cola, and their shares went up. So, as long as these stuff happen, I don't think we will have the shake-off in the market. Like the good thing that I think happened. Well, I'm sorry for the people that lost money, but this correction of price back in December did purge the market a bit. You know, because when you reach a point where average people on the street start asking you, listen, what should I buy from cryptocurrencies? And they literally can't use a smartphone, then you know it's time that things have to settle down. So maybe, you know, internet wouldn't look like it does now if there weren't for dot-com bubble. So maybe blockchain still needs some sort of purging, because to be honest, too many things happen at once. You would need 48 hours every day to stay up to date with every new project that is being announced on a daily basis. So I think that a lot of people will, you know, eventually lose interest because they just went into it because it's hype, it's the thing to do now.
So boom.
But once it settles, I think it's very promising industry. I think smart contracts are very important. I think some cryptocurrencies will be used on a daily basis. I'm sure there will be more than one. well, maybe it won't be Bitcoin, but I think people will. Digital money is the future, because even now, I mean, from elementary school, that all the money that exists doesn't exist physically, because of the fractional reserve banking and of the monetary supply and so on and so on.
So the documentaries,
So the money is already digital, and there is just a question whether whether we want to trust us or we want to trust some central bank. So I would rather trust my peers than someone who is in the position of power, but I know sometime it may pass until that happens, or it may never happen.
Okay. So I don't know if you're familiar with escrow.com.
I know about escrow accounts, but
it's a website that allows you, when you want to buy something on the internet, for example, a domain or account, so from social media or so on, for the person you're buying it from, to transfer it to escrow, and you give the money to escrow, and then when it's transferred to you, they pay the money to them. So basically, a proxy for trust. So,
but you have to trust them again.
Well, you have to trust escrow.com in this case. So you
always have to trust someone.
Exactly. You mentioned a trustless system.
Yeah.
So how can I do that with blockchain? So
you have to trust the technology. You have to trust the people, because it's been proven in multiple cases in history that people are not always run by their brains. They are run by emotions, by their ulterior motives, by some things that they shouldn't be motivated by. So me as a lawyer, I'm looking forward, which is why my colleagues tell me I'm crazy. I'm looking forward to smart contracts, which are supposed to revolutionize the way that we arrange our relations, our business relations. Because the problem with courts, and that's especially in Croatia, unfortunately, is that the system is so bad that people just refrain from going to court because it will last forever, the decision will be ludicrous and so on. So, even Thomas Hobbes said that what I've just said is actually Thomas Hobbes' quote, that people are provenly, phallic, that they have these flaws, and you should be able to create some alternative to the court system, which in my opinion, if you can create a digital alternative to if something can be done digitally, which is, by digitally I mean like open source and provable and understandable, I think it should be done. It can't be done absolutely and for everything. So there are things that in law that smart contracts will never be able to do. So you sometimes when you sign a contract with someone, the court has to decide whether you acted bona fide, in good faith.
Yeah.
So I may be wrong, but I don't see in the near future any sort of a system or program deciding who acted in good faith and who didn't. Okay. But already now we have a system that is good enough. I was actually a part of a jury that was in a hackathon where a 20-year-old kid programmed a public notary smart contract in a day and a half. Okay, he just did it for literally for fun. And if government stepped in and commissioned someone with experience to program a digital public notary, I'm sure public notaries in Croatia wouldn't be happy, but it could be done in a matter of months.
But the people who currently have to use public notaries would be a lot happier then.
Yes, but sometimes the system is in a manner that we look more of the interests of people who provide the services than the people to whom the services is provided. So blockchain is generally an attack on intermediaries. Yeah. So, for instance, if you back to copyright, you have ZAMP in Croatia, and you have these collection agencies that supposedly collect copyright on behalf of the artists, but it's really not transparent, and you have no idea where the money goes, and the majority of the money, to be honest, goes to them. And the problem is that they are not needed. If technology can do it for them, and there is already an initiative in the EU, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called ERIC. ERIC is the European Research Infrastructure Consortium. It is construed of several EU members, so it's sub-EU but above nation. So 3 or more EU nations can form an ERIC, And the first ERIC being created is to connect the users of copyrighted of art, so for instance music and movies, and the creators. So without anyone dealing between them. It's called CANAP or Rights Now, this project with Eric. So the idea is that if you, I don't know anyone, myself included, who doesn't want to pay, who doesn't want people that created some music or movie getting paid. But I know a lot of people who don't want to pay, to throw it somewhere and hope that it reaches the person who created it, which is the system that we have now.
Spray and pray.
Yeah. So it's an attack on intermediaries, and that's why bankers don't like it, that's why lawyers don't like blockchain, but we're going to have to live with it.
Except you.
No, I mean, I like it. I think it opens a lot of possibilities, but it's always when you cling to something old, to the old system, you usually get, left behind. So
what you just said makes a lot of sense, for example, to use smart contracts in business deals, but it's not very useful like in a murder trial or something like that.
No, I think it's used less, at least in the system now. It exists now, but sometime, at some point in time, maybe someone will create 100% reliable lie detector. So
yeah.
We should introduce it. We shouldn't just say, yeah, but people are better at judging what someone did or didn't. If it's 100% sure, we should use it. That's the reason why it's not used now, because it's not reliable. But to be honest, this sounds a bit too much as if I'm, pro technology. I'm very, very, because of the privacy issues and so on, I'm, very cautious about technology. So I have this dualism in myself. I like technology very much.
It's called cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic, but cautious prevails, maybe, at least.
Okay. So one of the things I've also heard, maybe you can help me with that, is the more people have the Bitcoin, the more people use a certain part of blockchain, the less new people it can be added, something like that. The fault of the entire blockchain premise.
As part of the, you may be thinking of the supply, because initially Bitcoin it still exists in the code of Bitcoin, that there will only once in 100 years or so be 21 million Bitcoin. So that is not changeable. So you can, once the 21st millionth Bitcoin is minted, that's the end of the game. End of the game meaning there will be no more Bitcoin. So you will have to purchase it for someone who has it before you. However, that will supposedly not happen in the near future, and there are debates on whether the majority of the chain can agree to change that part of the code and say, no, we will have 42 million Bitcoins. But for now, it is as it was initially intended by Satoshi, to have 21 million Bitcoins, and now it's about 17 or so.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
So now I will open the questions to the audience. Any questions?
I can make one correction. When you asked about the internet, not the decentralized internet is decentralized. If you turn off the Germany or whatever, internet is still working. So it's basically, it's not just one country. So, but what you can talk about is the decentralized data. If you put your picture on the internet, and that picture is not just on Amazon or some server, but it's everywhere and nowhere. Okay. So, but that's totally something in the future, because the blockchain is too slow for today ways of doing things. It would be like, if you want to get a picture, you will probably wait like an hour or even a few hours to even get it. So that's
There's the scalability issue, yes, of blockchain, but I don't agree the internet is already decentralized, because you still have ICANN giving you the domains, that's the problem.
What do you mean?
But when internet was created and when it started, from DARPANET and so on, there's this body called ICANN that assigns domains. So we are all in their mercy to give us the domain and the usage of domains. So it's not like Croatia can say, now we are running internet in our own country.
Internet is not dependent on them. For example, there is a projection that in the near future we're going to have like 2 internets. One will be Western type of internet, and another one will be Chinese type of internet, because of the economy straight and the power that China is projecting. They have totally different way of doing things, and you can definitely have 2 internets and independent from one another.
That would actually be then the world's largest intranet. Because it's a closed internet, only to China.
Well, you always have internet, you know, you can look at the Earth as the intranet and the Mars to the other intranet or whatever. So, you know, you can always go up, and down to fit your, you know, words to fit. But the thing is, I don't think the internet as such as domain names, because you don't need to even use domain names. In the early days, we didn't even have domain names. We use IPs. And because of that, it is decentralized as much as possible, just like it's Bitcoin. I mean, even if you have like 50% one people going rogue, let's say on Bitcoin, they can do whatever they want because they will be the majority. So they can still do that with the internet as well. But internet is to the point very, very decentralized.
Yes, Howard.
I still disagree.
Okay.
Well, at one point I had over 800 domains.
Yeah.
So know a tiny bit about internet domains, and it is true. It's ICANN, registry, registrator, and then somewhere in there is the user.
As long as someone can tell you that they will censor the access to your domain, it means that it's not
But you don't need to use domain
also.
Yeah, but what? But if I have to change my home because someone says that they will not build the road to my home, that means it's not decentralized.
Domains are just another top of layer on, you know, if you have like an internet, you have like layers of stuff, okay? And usually another, like a blockchain is another layer that we are putting on the internet. So the alias, the domain system is just, you know, to go around more easy, okay? So it's not really, it's, you know, it's more easy to market something.com than or 199, whatever. So it's not, domains are not something, it's, obviously it's harder, but it's not, they will not going to stop.
So you have cables from the cable companies, like
Yeah.
Pecom and so on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can always cut something, okay, whatever.
If you have your own cables around the world, then yes, but you don't have your own.
But yeah, you don't, but you will also, but just like with blockchain, you need to have everyone to agree or disagree for something to happen. So right now, the China don't have enough power to make like a second internet because everyone will say that's crazy. But at some point, you know, if they have enough, you know, reach into Africa, Asia.
It is possible, yeah, okay. So, do you have any question related, well, to blockchain? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so blockchain is already pretty old, around 10 years or so.
Yeah.
What about some new technologies like the electric acyclic graph and the Tango and so on?
What do you mean by different DLTs?
Yeah.
You have this general, like, it might be too technical, but it's, you have like these cryptocurrencies of first generation, second generation, and third generation. So Bitcoin is the simplest thing that can exist because the sole idea of Bitcoin was to be mined. Okay, so it does provide some rudimentary options for smart contracts, but it's not used, you know. Bitcoin was supposed to be the internet's money. It was supposed to be gold, you know. But then, for instance, if you look at Ethereum, it's more intended to be a platform. So it enables you to build the things on top of it, you know, smart contracts, for instance. And then there are these third generation, I don't know, Marina, if you know, there are fourth generation things being done, where they want to provide further possibilities because, as I've told you, not all transactions need to be of financial nature, you know. So the whole wide spectrum of things opened up for different, but their common denominator is that they are distributed technologies and that they are ledger technologies. So they are distributed in a manner that there's no single bookkeeper, and they're ledger in this sense of keeping records. And finally, you have to also take into account that what some big companies are doing is creating these private blockchains. What we are talking about are public blockchains, so accessible to anyone. However, as a notion, another idea is to have the private blockchains which are confined, you know, closed blockchains, which provide the same features, so same possibilities as does, for instance, Bitcoin's blockchain, but they are used within a certain network that is not accessible from outside. So the use cases are really beyond reasoning, beyond, you know, my imagination at least.
Oh, that sounds pretty interesting. So I would compare that to basically a private domain. You know, .Coca-Cola or something. Only people within Coca-Cola can have access to it. But in this case, it's a whole platform that you can build anything on.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, really, some things are I can't understand. Several people tried to explain to me what are ZK snarks, which are quite popular thing now, which is like a zero knowledge system of proving things. And I can't explain it in my words. I think I'm beginning to grasp how it works, which is something like you enter a password. I don't see what you've entered, but I know that the password is correct. So your password is never compromised because I never see it, but somehow I'm able to determine why it is correct. You know? So when you dig deeper, you find incredible stuff in there.
Okay, this blockchain is beginning to grow on me a little bit.
Only a little bit, yeah.
Are there any more questions? Going once, going twice. Sold to me. Thank you. So for let's say last question, what advice would you give to anyone who is thinking of well, not only purchasing but also spending time exploring blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and so on?
I don't think the investment part should be your driver, you know, so because you can always invest in it, but make sure to do your own research, you know, if you do want to invest. But on the other hand, the guys I know who program in some languages like Solidity tell me that if you are good in coding, it's not so difficult to switch to coding to blockchain. So if you are versed in coding, switching to some of the languages that are blockchain languages might be a good thing for you to do in order to enter this system.
So great opportunities for future developers.
Yeah, they are scarce on the market currently.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming here
Pleasure.
today. Thank you, everyone. And let's enjoy networking. Thank you.